Hi, welcome back. This is one of the many videos I'm doing at the moment on dissertations because everyone's in lockdown in 2020 at the time of filming. People aren't quite getting the contact that they used to with their dissertation supervisors, so I thought I'd put some videos together to help everybody out. I'll link the other videos on dissertations in the description below so that you can see absolutely everything from start to finish. And if you want more support on dissertation, leave me a comment and let me know and I'll put something together for you. So today's video is really about cutting word count. It can be applied to actually more or less any piece of writing that you do, but I think this is extra important in dissertations because when you start to write and you think, oh, I've got 12,000 words, you are so much more slack than you are when you're writing a 2,000 word essay. So that's not to say that you are writing well, okay? You are slack, your phrasing might be quite poor or quite sloppy because you're not being really strict with yourself. And at the end of the day, no matter how big your word count is, it's that big for a reason. Everything needs to reflect content. Every word needs to do a really clear job. It's not an opportunity for you to let yourself off the reins a little bit and be really verbose and really wordy, which is something that I'm quite guilty of or have been quite guilty of in the past. The number one biggest way to reduce word count is to check the structure. Now, hopefully at this stage in the game, that's something that you and your dissertation supervisor will have already done together. It's something that they'll have already picked up on. But if you find in your dissertation, you are spending too much time repeating context or unpacking issues again and again and again and again, it might be worth cross-referencing. Now, cross-referencing is a new skill. It's something you won't have likely done before in normal essays because you're writing something that's so extended, you need to actually say, oh, remember that bit we did in the introduction? See page such and such above. And this can often really be achieved in a citation. So if you're in, say, your second chapter and you feel like you're spending more than 1 or 2 sentences on context that you've drawn out at great length in the introduction, put in a footnote, see intro above, and put the relevant page number, okay? A sentence or two to help the reader and guide them along is fine because they don't want to be flipping absolutely back and forth all the time. However, if you're really spending about a paragraph saying something you've said before, send them back up to the introduction. You don't need to say that again. So checking the structure is something that you should have done to avoid repetition with your dissertation supervisor. A way out of that at this stage might be using cross-referencing because in most institutions I understand that you're given a sample of your dissertation but you don't give it all in, so there might be significant parts of your diss where you're actually just repeating what you said before. So cross-reference it, okay? That's going to be your biggest hitter. The next best way to really reduce word count, and this was something pretty important for me, I'm a literature person, I can bore a glass-eye to sleep talking about literature and I can waffle on and on and on, is to look for adverbs. Adverbs very often, but not always, aren't that helpful. So sometimes you get adverbs where you could really actually just be using a better verb. Now the way to find them is to go to, and I'll show you this on the screen, if you go to edit, you can come down to find in Microsoft Word and you can do find and replace, or you can just go in the corner and do a little search. Now search ly. All right, not all adverbs end in ly, but it's a really good quick way to find them. If you're getting to a point where you're reading through your dissertation and you can't really see it anymore, doing these searches can help you find little bits to tweak and edit that you would perhaps miss if you were skim reading it really, really quickly. So, for example, I've got increasingly dark and occult nature. I could put perhaps darkening. So using a better verb can get you out of using the adverb. Find your adverbs, call them, see if you could use a better verb. The next biggest thing that I usually do when I do it on all my work, even now I do it, is I look for of, okay? Because sometimes you'll pop in, the structure of the poem. You could just say the poem's structure and use an apostrophe because of isn't a really helpful word. It's not really doing very much. And so you should minimise your use of it if you can, okay? Number 4, discussion or footnote. Again, this is a hang up that we get from writing a dissertation and having more word count to play with than usual. And sometimes you include things that are really interesting, but they're perhaps not 100% relevant to the question. This is for a few reasons. I mean, part of it is the fact that you start the dissertation so early, you write it over a period of time, and by the time you come to the end, it's often the case that really you've changed or tweaked your focus or your question a little bit. So you're including material that might have been relevant when you started, and you like it, you find it interesting, and you want to keep it. Actually, it's not that helpful now. So this is the sort of stuff that you might put into a footnote and signpost out. So for me, for example, my dissertation was on witchcraft in Euripides' Medea and Shakespeare's Macbeth. And there's lots of stuff I was reading when I was looking at witches in Euripides' time, or ideas of what a witch might be in Euripides' time, on Euripides' Medea and gender. And there's so much scholarship on this stuff. And I could have really gone down a rabbit hole talking about it. I could have included chunks on this piece of work, on this scholarship that weren't really relevant to what I wanted to say. And at that point, that's where you say, okay, I want to show I've read this. I want to signal that there's a debate about this, but it's not helping me answer my question. So that's where you need to start moving stuff into the debate. I mention it in a lot of videos. Do the so what test on all your paragraphs. So every paragraph, you should be able to cover up the rest of your work, read that paragraph and see what it's doing to help you answer the question. If that paragraph is not helping you answer the question, it needs to not be there. It's a waste of space. If you're really lucky, in some schools footnotes don't actually count. I would never recommend putting a whole paragraph in a footnote, but 1 or 2 sentences is fine, and it will really actually make your core argument, your central argument, much clearer and easier to follow. It's not removing good work, it's actually refining what you have and making it better. Extended quotes aren't a fabulous use of space, unless you are going to really pick up on the nuances of phrasing. So if you are looking at classical literature in translation, if you're not looking at it in the original, but you want to analyse the translator's choices, it's worth quoting because you're picking up on word choice. Makes sense. If you want to give an impression of what happens in a scene or the gist of a particular theme in the play or in the prose or whatever you're reading, you can actually just summarise it, give a couple of key quotes or summarise it and give a really specific citation with the line numbers in there as well. Same for scholarship. Often if we see a sentence, 2 sentences on somebody else's argument, I can't help but think, could you have summarised that more succinctly than quoting the argument itself? Quoting is not king because your references at this point should be so detailed that we can go and chase it up ourselves and we could go and read that scholar. And actually it's more helpful for the marker to know that you have read and understood the work. So if you summarise a scholar, we know that you've not just read it and picked a bit out and stuck it in your dissertation, you've read the whole argument and you've summarised it very effectively. So if you're including lots and lots and lots of extended quotes, especially if you have the same extended quote more than once, please do cross-reference to your one quotation of that quote to help you out. That's something that can be called in order to make room for your argument to develop, okay? Even if you're at 13,200 of a 12,000 word dissertation, what you need to do really is trim your work and prune it down and refine it. So it's always better to get to as close to the word count as possible. Okay, good luck. If you want any more advice and tips on dissertations, leave me a comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the channel going. All right, thanks.